Hi, everyone. This is a market recap for Tuesday, August 4th, 2026. So, really fantastic day in the market. Q's had an insane follow through day today, back over the 50-day. We're up 3.5% almost. SPY is back at all-time highs, just like that, right? In a matter of 4 days off the lows, we are back at all-time highs. That just goes to show how quickly these snapbacks can really be. Um, and it's good to see, like I was anticipating a follow-through day, as many other traders were. However, I was not particularly happy with the timing of this follow-through day. As I was sort of talking about yesterday and the day before, is I really wanted to see a couple days of tightness or selling before we got the follow through day. Because when you have a day like this, after kind of a straight up rally, there's no easy way to position into anything. Um, and that's kind of the moral of the story today is like, don't chase. At least that's what I'm telling myself. Um, I don't know what other people's strategies are, but for the way that I like to trade stocks, today just, although it was phenomenal in terms of, bullish pressure, um, there just wasn't anything for me to buy. I took a tiny position on Webull, and I'll get to that in a minute. Um, but right, all the three stocks on my watch list: HPE, gap up out of this consolidation; Dell, gap up out of its consolidation; and DDOG, gap up out of its, or not gap up, but break out of its consolidation. Right? I didn't trade DDOG because earnings are in 2 days from now, and I think several other traders obviously felt the same way because, I mean, we had an insane push today, but volume is not particularly elevated. Um, Dell, while it had a gap up. I mean, first of all, I didn't find this consolidation to be as tight as I would have wanted it to be anyway. Um, but this thing is up. You'd want to buy it over, these highs over here. It's like it's going to be up 10% by the time you want to press the buy button. It's like, no way can I do that. And even in HBE, while HBE provided a washout, uh, and perhaps realistically, I should have been watching for a buying opportunity off of the $50 level, um, and off of its consolidation highs, right? That's not typically the way I trade, right? I mean, it filled the gap pretty much perfectly, which is cool. Um, but I, I mean, again, the market is just straight up. To me, like, I wouldn't be surprised if we see selling tomorrow in the next couple of days. It's like you want to buy into a Dell or you want to buy into an HP. You're buy or an HPE. You're buying into an already extended short-term rally, in my opinion. Um, And that's just my own personal interpretation of that, obviously. Uh, and again, I probably would have been a buyer of HPE had we not had that day yesterday. Um, if we had just put in a tight little day, or we didn't make new highs yesterday, or like we didn't make a high over the 31st high yesterday, I would have considered this. But to me, the the entry off the lows is just too straight up for me to feel comfortable buying it. I would have liked to have seen another day or two of just nothing and then a breakout. But we just gapped over it. I think this provided the best entry of all of the bases, obviously, because it provided a washout. Um, but I'm not in it. And it's a little hard not to feel some FOMO today, with everything in the market going up. But I'll live, obviously. Um, but it's hard not to be a little frustrated. I did take an FRO position yesterday, and of course, this thing stops me out. And this one hurts a little more today because everything else in the market is, straight up. Um, and I kind of expected that this was going to happen. I don't want to say I expected it, but I was certainly wary of it. And as I was saying yesterday, whenever there's like a super volatile day before earnings, my confidence of a strong breakout, that, or why did I say earnings? A super volatile day before breakout, my confidence for that breakout to actually hold is like reduced significantly. And, that, I guess, thinking was correct in this particular instance. There are several reasons why this could have put in a red day today. One, I think there was some potential news of the Strait of Hormuz reopening. I mean, that to me is kind of a negligible news catalyst, considering that news catalyst is like reused probably 50 times at this point, but it was there nonetheless. Um, Eyes were focused on tech and momentum stocks, not on tankers. Fair, that's reasonable. Three, crude put in a bit of a red day today. That's also reasonable, although this has shown time and time again this does not exactly move with crude. And tankers in general don't particularly move with crude. But again, a super volatile day yesterday signals bearish short-term price action. At least that's my personal experience. And if we wanted to have a washout yesterday, like we saw, we better have broken over 40 and closed at like at least $40.20. If we're not closing that strong, this is still just another nothing day, right? And I think that's kind of what I needed to understand before taking this position, right? I took it over, the 31st highs, and I think that's a reasonable entry. Um, but again, there was not enough confirmation that this was a real breakout here. Um, and I think that's kind of the lesson for a chart like this is, volatile days I don't love, but also this buying this at the close, which is when this was buyable. I mean, there wasn't really a whole lot to do with, you know what I mean? There was not uh, a clean, decisive breakout. So that was, a bit of a mistake on my part. Took a loss on FRO. Fine, it is what it is. Um, my portfolio as a whole didn't do a whole lot today. Um, MT, really nice day today. This is by far the strongest in my portfolio, at least in the short term. Really nice continuation. Steel names as a whole did really, really well today. If we're looking at SCLF, an MTUS, a CMC, an NUE, an STLD, right? All-time highs on NUE. This to me looks like it could very well be the beginning of a fresh trend. I hope that is the case because, in my opinion, MT is the leader. You know, Pure speculation. We'll see what happens. Just glad that this thing has put some distance between my entry. Um, that makes me feel better. FFBC and the financials finally put in a decent day today. Um, Closed all right. The volume on this is kind of eh. I'm really sick and tired of being in this stock. My new stop loss is at the low of this day, right? To me, this should have been the breakout level. So if we don't hold, I'll be out of this. HF Sinclair, kind of scary in the morning. Luckily, we kind of reclaimed. Some stocks, I like to say stocks have their own behavior, their own rhythm, and I really, really believe that to be the case with a stock like Dino. This thing very regularly, and on this trend up, for example, I mean, we saw this pretty much every single day with a bottoming wick, is it would start off the day kind of red and weak, and then, the last couple hours, it would get bought up. And it happened again today. Why that is, I don't know, just a weird pattern I'm noticing, but not particularly important. This thing closed reasonably strong, and I think a lot of the refineries still look pretty good, right? MPC had earnings today, which luckily it held up. Um, VLO and PARR, right? They're all looking reasonably good. So that makes me feel a little bit better about my Dino position. My new stop loss is going to be at the low of this consolidation here. It's a very easy level to bump a stop to. Um, but I would love to see strong continuation on a stock like this. Although crude is not doing particularly well, the refineries are holding up substantially better. My Brinker International position, a bit of a digestion today, no pun intended. Um, this this is an interesting day to track, in my opinion. This thing has been doing well for an extended period of time. It has shown substantial relative strength to the market in its most recent trend higher. However, when you have a big market push like we saw today and a stock like this is red, the word that comes to my mind is rotation. Um, and I think there are several ways to interpret a day like today in a stock like this, because for one, it's shown huge relative strength, but two, as we start to see money rotate into tech, into momentum, into data, whatever, do we start to see a rotation back out of stocks like this, right? Is this just what people were trading while the market was kind of doing nothing? Or is this a genuine strong stock? I think no matter what, it's a strong stock, but I just don't really know if this is like, did we just top right here? I'm not necessarily sure. Uh, but I wouldn't be overly surprised. In an ideal world, I'd like to see consolidation into earnings and then a gap up on earnings as a final kind of explosive push, and I could just sell the rest of my position into that gap up. But that's asking for a lot. Um, so yeah, I don't really know what to think of the restaurant stocks. Right, there are very few sectors that were red today. Restaurant stocks being one of them. Again, these are still very strong charts, right? Cake was still strong today. These are it's still a strong sector. This is just very early speculation. I'm not saying anything for a fact, just my own thoughts. Um, but I don't know what to make of it. I did take a small position on Webull today. This is the second trade I have taken on Webull. The first entry I had on it was on the 6th off the 10-day exponential moving average. Right, I really liked this base we were kind of forming. I pretty much never trade stocks under the 200. However, during this time, Robinhood was looking pretty decent, and I thought this was a reasonable higher low setup. And we tried, and then I got stopped out on the 17th. However, we sort of have this EMA SMA convergence here, and now we are back over all of the EMAs and SMAs very decisively, and back over this sort of 750 level. So I bought this at the close with a pretty small position actually, because I don't love what Hood is doing right now, and I don't love what Interactive Brokers is doing right now. Now, whether these stocks move in relationship with Bull or Webull at this point is, you know, its own argument or debate. But either way, I'm in it. I'm in a small position. I also think the market could stand to put in a red day or two. Uh, and with that in mind, I just didn't want to size up a whole lot. And not to mention that this thing is under the 200 and just now reclaiming it. It's not exactly a market leader. Um, so yeah, don't really know too much what to make of this position. I'm fine with experimenting with this. If it stops me out, I won't have any hard feelings about it. Um, anyway, we did see money flow into other metals beyond steel. Copper looks particularly good, right? FCX has been forming a base for a long time. Southern Copper has been forming a base for a long time. I really like these charts. However, it's still very difficult to get positions into them. If this thing just decides to break over, 189 tomorrow, I mean, there's no entry. But if this thing pulls back and wants to fill in this gap and kind of wick off this level, I would consider buying it as a pullback trade. Um, Silver even saw some name uh, moves today. Um, Gold a little bit. All right, if we go through some of the silver names, right? Frankly, kind of almost looks like a decent short opportunity for some of the silver stocks. Um, but one stock stood out in particular. That would be AYA. This thing had a base forming for a while. This is not a chart I would trade. Um, and purely from a technical standpoint, I want to say that this looked really good for a breakout. However, one, I don't love what silver and gold are doing right now anyway. But two, um, when you see charts like this, like I don't know how to explain it. It's it's a clean consolidation, but it's also a very, very long and choppy consolidation. Um, when you see charts like this and they put in a big breakout day, you better be trimming into this strength because this is kind of just a random stock. It's also a little bit thinner. I would not have much confidence that this thing just continues higher. Now, again, it could, and I think if you did trade this, you are totally justified in trading it because it's a good setup. But when I see charts that kind of look like this, I become a little bit skeptical about how well their move will actually hold up. Usually, you get a decent first push, and then it sort of stalls out. Um, just my own weird personal experience speaking. Again, if you traded this, I think this is a totally reasonable trade. Just not something I would personally trade. Um, so metals looked decent. Uh, Travel stocks looked all right. Nothing too crazy about travel. Healthcare is still kind of digesting a little bit, right? If we look at kind of an XLV, nice consolidation, not really too much happening in healthcare at the current moment. Biotechs had a nice day today, uh, right? If we're looking at most biotechs for that matter, they put in decent green days. Um, Not all, of course, but I think a lot of them look reasonably good. And especially if you really want to just look at biotechs, you look at the XBI. We finally put in a decent green day back over the moving averages, closing over them right off a nice wick off the 50-day. So did we finally bottom? I have a feeling we probably bottomed for now. So biotechs look pretty good. Um, Banks still look pretty good. I stopped out of my PNC position yesterday. That was a bit of a mistake. If we got the continuation that I was kind of expecting, and well, I'm out of it now. Not that I had a particularly big position in it, but nonetheless, a little bit frustrating. Um, Data storage names still look kind of weak in my opinion, aside from STX. WDC is reasonable too. MU and SNDK just don't look super good in my opinion. But again, I think a trade over, you know, the 31st highs is reasonable. I still want more sideways on this. But frankly, if this thing decided to break out over 922 tomorrow, um, I'd consider it with a small position. Um, I honestly probably not. I probably wouldn't trade this because I just don't love what the prior leaders are doing right now. I still think semis and tech still has quite a lot of work to do, aside from a select few being Nvidia, um, AVGO, uh, and that's it. And I don't know if I mentioned it already, but AVGO is setting up really similar to how it did back in late March. We kind of have this consolidation under the 50, this sort of channeling price action, and then boom, you gap up over the 50-day and you're breaking out off to the races. So I could easily see this getting back up to all-time highs and then consolidating under $500 and then potentially providing a new entry, which would be awesome. But this is definitely a stock to track because this looks the best as far as semis go, in my opinion, which is quite the statement. But I mean, if I go through my list of semis, right, NVIDIA, QCOM, Intel, TSM, AVGO, ADI, right, you get the idea. I don't see, oh, and then there's AMD and AEHR. So AMD looks pretty good, and AEHR looks pretty good. If I can go to it right now. Yeah. So AEHR, AMD, AVGO, and NVIDIA look the best to me. The other ones I still think just look kind of crappy. Aerospace names had a nice day today. If you look at the ITA, kind of coming right up into all-time highs. I hope we don't just break out tomorrow, right? It's possible, given this current market, that's kind of what we've just been seeing. But if we pull back into around 240s level, 242 to 240, and we wick off that level, I would consider that a pullback trade. um, but until then, nothing really to do with the ITA, in my opinion, although several of the aerospace and defense names look really good, right? If you look at RTX or um, Lockheed Martin, Boeing had a big day yesterday. Um, so, it's a strong sector. Um, Aside from that, optics saw a decent day today, right? I could go on and on about the stocks that were green today, right? Pretty much most sectors were green, aside from a few being like insurance was a little spotty. Some of the insurance names were pretty good. Yeah, the insurance is fine. Um, not credit cards. Healthcare a little bit weak today. Hotels were a little bit weak today. If we're looking at APLE, a DRH, a PK, or a PEB. Some of the travel names were a little weak today. Again, kind of specifically the hotel, right? If you're looking at airlines, you're going to see a push higher in cruise lines because crude is dropping. Um, and then some of the restaurant names, um, and some of like the larger international banks were a little bit red today, right? If we're looking at like a TD, um, right, a bit of a false breakout today. And TD is kind of setting up very similarly to how it's set up um, on January of this year. Kind of this weird uh, flag type of thing. These aren't stocks that I would trade. These are very, very slow. But either way, we'll see what these kind of larger banks do. But watch list for tomorrow. I really don't have anything on the breakout watch. Again, not able to trade HPE, not able to trade AMD, not able to trade Dell, not able to trade um, DDOG, right? Very irritating, right? Really wanted this thing not to break out before earnings, but well, here we are. It broke out before earnings. Um, really needed to the rest of these to just not do what they did, and they did what they did. So it's a bit unfortunate. Really, at this point, I'm just looking for pullback entries on like some of the metal stocks like copper, um, and a couple of the semis maybe. I'd consider pullback trades, uh, but I mean that's about it. Like I don't really have much else to say. A bit of FOMO today, um, but grateful that my portfolio has really been doing fine for a while now. It's not really the issue. The issue is more like I guess the FOMO is like, oh no, how am I going to get positioned in this market if things are just straight up? And there's just kind of a lack of setups in the momentum space anyway. Um, so yeah, don't really know what to make of it, but that's all I got, and I appreciate you guys for watching. Um, anyway, so thank you for listening.